So what makes us vulnerable to an addiction? Maybe some of you already know that 50%, we have a 50% chance of having an addiction if our parents struggle with an addiction, or the people who raised us, our family members. My mother is still obese today. She's 80 years old. She struggles with a food addiction today. But I also had addictions. I've had 5 different addictions over the years that my parents didn't model to me and that they did not have. Even more, what makes us even more vulnerable to an addiction, besides genetically becoming predispositioned, is environmentally, if we have trauma in our life. So if any of you have been raised in an environment with physical abuse, sexual abuse, right? 1 in 5 women in our country are sexually abused. 1 in 10 boys in our country are sexually abused. Emotional abuse, right? The #1 reason children have emotional problems today in the schools is from bullying. Any type of unhealed trauma. I kind of want to take a moment and explain to you the difference between abuse and trauma, because you can have abuse without trauma, and you can also have trauma without abuse. Trauma is when you are involved in a situation, an experience, where either you feel like your life is threatened, right? It could be a car accident, it could be in the military on the front lines, it could be physical abuse, it could be bullying, where you feel like your life is threatened and you do not have the resources or the means to protect yourself. Or you could have trauma from witnessing someone you love, like a parent or loved one, be traumatized. Like I remember a client coming to me, he was 40 at the time, and when he was 5 years old, he stood at the bedroom door watching his alcoholic father come through the door and point a gun at his mother's head. And he was not able to protect his mother. So you can have trauma from that as well. Witnessing someone that's in a life-threatening situation, or you yourself are in a life-threatening situation and cannot protect yourself. That trauma happens in the brain. If after the traumatic experience you're not able to process that trauma in a healthy way because your emotions are too intense, or you don't have a safe place to go to process it, then you will have unresolved trauma. It'll be stored in the brain, and it causes problems with mental health. You could have sleep disorders. You could have anxiety disorder caused from it, depression, mental health disorders caused from a trauma that's unhealed in your body. So you can imagine, if you have unhealed abuse or trauma, how does it feel to be in your body and in your mind when you're totally sober and you're not medicated and you're not distracted? How does it feel to be in this mind that is racing and not able to cope or feel good, not even know how to soothe yourself? And this is why we look for something unhealthy outside of ourselves to make us feel better. Mental health disorders, the top 2 mental health disorders that co-occur with unhealthy dependency are going to be depression, which means not enjoying your life, caused from a lot of negative thinking, or anxiety, which means you do not trust that everything in your life is going to work out for your highest good. Your mind leaves your body, and it thinks about things in the future that you want to avoid from happening, or your mind goes to the past and thinks about things in the past that you wish didn't happen, and you have difficulty just staying in the present moment. Distorted thinking is at the root of all dysfunction. So whether I have an unhealthy dependency, or whether I have anger problems or relationship problems, all of that comes from distorted thinking. Distorted thinking means I believe things that aren't based in a universal truth. So most of us get beliefs. The way you get a belief system is a repeated thought over and over, or a repeated experience over and over. So for example, a distorted thought might be, years ago when I was dating and I was very young, in my 18 and early 20s, I had 2 different relationships, one that lasted about 2.5 years and one that lasted 4. I was engaged to both of these men. Both of them cheated on me, and that's how the relationship ended. So I acquired this very distorted belief that men are cheaters, which is not a universal truth. There's millions of men in our country who are 100% monogamous to their spouses and partners. So that's how a distorted belief gets developed. If something happens in our personal life and we think, oh, that's how it is universally. The way to correct distorted beliefs is always to ask, can that belief or thought ever be refuted in any situation under any circumstance, so that you're always aligning with truth. The inability to calm or regulate our emotions is the number one reason behaviorally or psychologically that people become dependent on an unhealthy substance or behavior. And this is some of the research done at Harvard shows this. So when we have really, really intense emotions and stress, if we do not know how to calm ourselves and tell ourselves, it's going to be okay, everything's going to be all right, you're doing the best you can, you're going to be okay, and you aren't able to forgive yourself of guilt, and you're not able to really be gentle with your thoughts and non-critical, then you're going to, again, look for something outside of yourself to make yourself feel better. God wired us to be dependent. We're already predispositioned for dependency on God. So when I am not dependent on God, I look for something outside of myself in the world to make myself feel better. It could be unhealthy food. It could be cigarettes. It could be gambling. It could be sex. It could be video games. It could be sports. It could be any of these things that when I do this thing out here, this behavior or this substance, this is what I depend on to make me feel better, to soothe me, because I don't know how to make myself feel better in a healthy way. Lack of healthy relationship support. The research shows we do not thrive in isolation. If we grow up in an unhealthy family, which is 93% of America grows up in dysfunctional homes, I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients I see who come in who have unhealthy relationships with their parents, haven't spoken to a parent in years, or a sibling, or an aunt, or an uncle, or a grandparent, and these unhealthy relationships, the pain of that, because oftentimes these are people we are bonded with, makes us vulnerable to want to use something outside of ourselves, again, to feel better. Inability to connect to ourself or God. An addiction is a disconnection from ourselves. If I was connected to myself when I was addicted to food, then I wouldn't be eating when I'm not hungry. I would be stopping when I'm full. Many times I overate past the point where I would have a stomach ache and continue eating because I'm disconnected from myself, from my thoughts, feelings, memories, and body. So that's one of the benefits that we think that addiction allows for us, is it disconnects us from ourself, from this mind, if this mind is critical, from the unhealed abuse or trauma in our life, from stress, from a divorce, from a loss. Think of all the things we go through in life, and this is the very first time we're experiencing it. The very first time we've lost a parent, the very first time we've had to deal with a divorce, the very first time we've had to deal with someone we love leaving us. All of these brand new experiences that we go through, and we don't have the coping skills to deal with it. So we oftentimes reach for something outside of ourselves that's unhealthy to soothe or calm us. And then the last one is low self-esteem, which I already talked about, which is 100% true in any single person who makes consecutively poor choices. All of my choices, that means with my relationship, with my job, with what I put in my body, with where I put my body in the environments, all of that is a direct reflection on how much I value and love this person.